budget. But permit me to give you a brief introduction and situate this budget discussion to where we are. You recall that as a country, we have so far had 9 consecutive quarters of growth since the country exited from recession, and we also continue to deepen our non-oil revenue performance. We have also made some good progress in the fight against the insurgency in the Northeast, as well as seeing relative stability in the militancy in the Niger Delta region. Our country also has moved from a deficit to a surplus in our trade balances by the end of the second quarter 2016. We have been able to raise and maintain stable oil production levels. We have also seen unprecedented progress in the social investment programs, and we continue to innovate in that field. Let me give you a very quick overview of where we were in 2018. We had planned a growth rate of 3.5%. We ended 2018 with a growth rate of 1.93%. We also had planned a production of 2.3 million barrels per day. We ended up 2018 with production of 1.84 million barrels per day. The 2018 budget, in terms of revenue, the total revenue performance was 55%. This is aggregate performance. The oil sector revenue was 77%, while non-oil revenue was 76%. The government independent revenue was 54%, and there were some revenue lines that did not perform at all because the restructuring of the JV that we planned did not happen. So this pulled down the total aggregate revenue to 77%, despite the appreciable increase in the oil and the non-oil revenue. On expenditure, the 2018 expenditure performed at an aggregate level of 76%. Personnel cost was 99%. Debt service was 98%. Revenue for 2019 half year, prorated, that is January to June, performed at 58%. The trend is similar to 2019, with oil revenue performing lower than what happened in 2018, and non-oil revenue performing better than the performance in 2018. On slide 9, the revenue performance as at half year, the total actual amount, aggregate amount, was 2.04 trillion, and this represents 58%, like I said. Oil revenue performance was 49%, while company income tax was 86%, VAT performed at 71%, and customs revenue outperformed at 100.47%. The overall revenue performance of 58% of the target by half year 2019 is largely due to some one-off items. Again, the 710 billion from the oil joint venture assets restructuring, which did not happen, as well as 320 billion from the revision of the oil production sharing contracts, which also was not realized. In fact, the National Assembly is today holding a public hearing on the review that we hope to happen to amend the PSC Act of 1999. If that is done, at least we'll have more comfort that the projection in the 2020 budget will be realized. On expenditures, half year 2019, the total expenditure performance was of the 8.92 trillion that was budgeted. Half year will have been 4.58. The actual spend was 3.39, and this represents a 76% performance. Debt service as well as recurrent non-debt expenditure, including workers' salaries and pensions, are very much on track. Capital releases did not commence during the half year of 2019 because the 2019 budget was passed into law on the 27th of May, and because there was an interregnum where a lot of key operators such as ministers and a cabinet was not in place, releases did not start until late July, and as at last week, we have scheduled and partly, mostly released that are releases that are now up to 650 billion. This 297 was as at end of September, but we continued to release, and now we are about 650 billion. The target we have is to be able to reach 900 billion by the end of December 2019. The fiscal outcomes for half year 2019 is as shown on slide 12. The GDP growth that was planned for the year was 3.01%, and the actual performance as at half year was 2.02%. Oil production was planned at 2.3%. Again, oil production was just 1.86%. But this does not include 100,000 barrels per day, which NMPC has been authorized to use to settle arrears of cash call obligations. So if you add those, it will have been 1.96 million barrels per day. The crude oil price by half year is $67.2 per barrel. This is against the planned $60 per barrel for the full year 2019. Inflation is at 11.4% by half year. Official exchange rate remains flat. On slide 14, is just a quick, from slide 14, I'll go through a quick overview of the global economic outlook. The global economic recovery was projected to grow from 3.2% in 2019 to 3.5% by the year 2020. In sub-Saharan Africa, growth is projected to continue, rising from 3.4% in 2019 to 3.6% in the year 2020. Growth in advancing economies is projected to decline, while the global outlook is affected by the tensions between China and the US, the uncertainties around Brexit, as well as the renewed round of sanctions on Iran. In the Euro area, growth is expected to rebound from 1.3% in 2019 to 1.6% in the year 2020. The baseline production of 1.3% and 1.4% growth in the UK is surrounded by this prolonged uncertainty around the Brexit. Emerging economies in Asia are expected to maintain their robust performance. With Nigeria joining the AFCFTA, African countries to sign the AFCFTA, there will be tremendous opportunities for our country in the medium term. However, there could also be some very significant challenges if we don't take very quickly the right policy actions to enable us to take advantage of this commitment. On slide 18 is just a brief overview of what is happening in the domestic environment. Macroeconomic stability has been largely achieved. Real GDP increased from 1.89 in quarter one of 2018 to 2.02 in the half year of 2019. We have also seen significant growth in non-oil sector from 2.47% by the first quarter of 2019, and this is up from 0.76% in the first quarter of 2018. However, this growth has moderated by June 2019 to 1.64%. The contribution of the non-oil sector to the GDP increased from 90.4% in quarter one of 2018 to 90.9% in quarter one of 2019, and then further increased to 91.18% in the second quarter of this year. Employment growth usually slows down during recession and takes some time to recover after recession. Therefore, it's not surprising that the National Bureau of Statistics data shows that unemployment and underemployment remain high in Nigeria at 23.1% and 20.1% respectively as at the third quarter of 2018. We expect more diversified and inclusive growth over the medium term and a reduction in the rate of unemployment. Also, Mr. President has strongly indicated that in his second term, employment generation will remain a key focus. Hence, the 2020 budget of sustained growth and job creation is designed to create jobs in different sectors. Considering considerable success has been achieved in containing insurgency in the northeast region. However, we are also still witnessing significant recurring conflicts between farmers and herdsmen. At slide 21, what you have is just a picture of the growth rate, so you can see the growth is consistently trending upwards. You can also see that foreign reserves have increased from 27.86% in March 2016 to 44.43, that is billion dollars, to 44.43 billion dollars in August 2019. Let me take you through the underlying assumptions driving the macroeconomic parameters and the targets for the 2020 budget. The 2020 budget is set on a crude oil production of 2.18 million barrels per day. The crude oil price is set at $57 per barrel, and this is as approved by the National Assembly in the MTEP for 2020 to 2022. Exchange rate remains flat at 305 naira to the dollar. We are projecting an inflation rate year close 2020 of 10.81%, a nominal GDP of 122.75 trillion naira, and nominal consumption, I beg your pardon, and then a nominal GDP of 142.96 trillion naira. We project 2020 to close with a growth rate of 2.93%. Let me speak to you briefly about why these assumptions are made. Oil production volume is projected to average at 2.18. This is a decline from the 2.3 million barrels per day in the 2019 budget. We believe this is a more realistic projection for for the year 2020, because it is clear that we're actually averaging at about 2 to 2.1. And also, even though our production capacity is at 2.5, we still have not been able to attain the 2.3 that were projected in previous years. For 2018, for example, the actual production was 1.84, and for 2019, half year was 1.86. So we decided to reduce the production volume to make the budget more realistic. There's also a lower crude oil benchmark price. In 2016, the price was $60 per barrel. We are assuming that, considering the expected oil gluts in 2020, and also that there is a need that there will be a price cut, and these price cuts the price decline is already apparent even as we speak in 2019. There are also strong indications of an oversupplied market, and all three of the major oil price forecasting organizations such as OPEC, IAE, and the U.S. Energy Information Administration generally see non-oil production growing only by around 2 million barrels per day this year. U.S. shale oil accounts for most of the total supply increase, but new projects in Norway, Brazil, and Australia also will increase to the crude oil availability in the market. Market sentiments do not support an expansion in demand. In fact, the growth in demand for OPEC oil is specifically projected to slow down in the year 2020. Our real GDP growth projection rate of 2.93% for 2020 falls short of the ERGP target of 7%. Personnel cost, inclusive of pensions, is well over 3.0 trillion, and it continues to rise. The federal government has, however, taken steps to contain the rising personnel cost, including the president has directed that from the October salary, any MDA who is not on the IPPIS, any staff who is not on the IPPIS platform will not be receiving salaries. At slide 29 is just a picture to show the aggregate revenue available for funding the 2020 budget, and this is projected to be 8.155 trillion naira. This is 7% or 561.2 billion naira more than the projection in the 2019 budget, which amount was 7.59 trillion. 32.34% of this projected amount is to come from oil sources, while the balance is to be from non-oil revenues. At slide 28 is a picture that shows you the contribution of the various revenue streams to the total revenue. So the aggregate revenue available for the 2020 budget, which is 8.155%, oil revenue is 32.34%. Non-oil revenue for CAT in particular, the projection is the contribution will be 10.29%. For customs revenue, it will be 7.59%, while the contribution of revenue from the government-owned enterprises, including the top 10 government-owned enterprises, excluding NNPC, is 12.14%. There's also independent revenue, which will be contributing 10.47%. The federal government signature bonuses, as well as early renewals and renewal of oil block licenses, is expected to contribute 11.52% to the total revenue. This presentation document will be posted today in the website of the Budget Office of the Federation, because I know you can't follow all the details here, so you can interrogate the details more closely. At slide 29 is an overview of the expenditure framework in the 2020 budget proposal. The federal government plans to spend a total of 10.33 trillion. The total size of the 2020 expenditure budget is 10.33 trillion. And this includes recurrent non-debt spending of 4.88 trillion, reflecting increases in salaries and pensions, including provisions for implementation of the new national minimum wage. Capital expenditure, inclusive of transfers, government-owned enterprises, capital and project-tied loans, as well as a percentage of federal government expenditure, is 24%. We also have a provision of 2.45 trillion for debt service. Debt service represents 23.74% of the total targeted expenditure. Provisions to retire maturing bonds to local contractors increased from 169.0 billion in 2019 to 296 billion naira in the year 2020. Let me give you a quick overview of the deficit and the financing of the budget, as well as some important ratios to consider. The overall deficit in the 2020 budget is 2.175 trillion naira, and this represents 1.52% of the gross domestic product. Projected deficit is within the threshold stipulated in the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which still stands at 3% of GDP. Budget deficit is to be financed mainly by borrowing, 1.649 trillion from both domestic as well as foreign sources. Domestic borrowing will be 744.99 billion, while foreign borrowing will be 850 billion. At slide 21, presenting to you some of the top 12 recurrent allocations in the 2020 budget. Allocations that are shown on this slide underscore our commitment to increase investments in national security as well as in human capital development. So you will see that the recurrent expenditure budget, the largest allocation, is to the Ministry of Defense in the total sum of 778.59 billion. The next is to education at 490.2 billion, and then police affairs, again security, at 395.83 billion. Ministry of Health, 336.32 billion. Ministry of Interior, 219.49 billion. Ministry of Sports and Youth Development, 168.33 billion. There is also the others are Ministry of Petroleum Resources, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Office of the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, Federal Ministry of Agriculture at 58.67%, and Federal Ministry of Science and Technology at 49.80 billion. This is recurrent expenditure. Let me also present to you the top 10 capital expenditure allocations in the 2020 budget. The social investment program allocations are included in the Ministry of Humanitarian Development, Disaster Assistance, as well as Social Development. Federal Ministry of Health allocation also includes the provision of the Basic Health Care Provision Fund. UBEC is included in the capital allocations for Federal Ministry of Education. There is also the Power Sector Reform Program transfers to N8.15trn, the electricity bulk trading company. Is included in the power sector capital. So the largest capital allocation was to the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing in the sum of 259.2 billion naira. This is followed by Ministry of Education, including UBEC, at 162.74 billion. The third is the Ministry of Power, and this includes transfers to N8.15trn, placed at 127.67 billion naira. Ministry of Transportation at 123.07 billion. Ministry of Defense, 99.87 billion. Ministry of Health, 90.98 billion. Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, 79.79 billion. There's also an allocation of 78.34 billion to the Federal Ministry of Water Resources, and then to the Humanitarian Ministry, a total of 54.45 billion. Federal Ministry of Aviation has been allocated 53.85 billion, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, 41.34 billion, and Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, 37.55 billion. at slide 33 is just a note that is calling attention to the key capital expenditures captured in the NTEF, but are not included in the federal government budgets. And this includes 61 billion provision for Presidential Power Initiative. There's a federally funded project in the oil and gas sector to be undertaken by NNPC on behalf of the Federation at 1.22 trillion. There's also 272 billion transfers to TET Fund. There's a transfers to Sovereign Wealth Authority, NSIA, of 82.32 billion. And this is for the PPP for the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund. As Mr. President stated in his budget speech, investing in critical infrastructure, human capital development, and enabling institutions, especially in key job-creating sectors, incentivizing private sector investments, essential to complementing the federal government development plans, policies, and programs, remain a key focus in the 2020 budget. Let me speak to you about improved revenue generation for sustainable economic growth. The Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning continues to concentrate and focus on growing revenues. To give you a picture, a peer comparison in relation to total taxes to GDP, as well as comparison relating to VAT to GDP, and comparisons of excise duty to GDP, indicate a capacity for Nigeria to do more to improve its physical space. So for example, the ECOWAS average of total tax to GDP is 14.6%. VAT to GDP, excluding Nigeria in the ECOWAS region, is 6.7%. Ghana, our next door neighbor, has a total tax to GDP of 15.5%, while Nigeria's tax to GDP is currently standing at about 8%. While Ghana's VAT to GDP is 4.6%, Nigeria's VAT to GDP is 0.8%. Excise duties in Ghana to GDP is 1.7%, while Nigeria's excise duties to GDP is 0.1%. The trend is similar whether you look at Benin or Kenya or South Africa. It means Nigeria has a lot to do to improve its physical space. It is based on this, the need to grow revenues, that the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning designed and launched a strategic revenue growth initiative, which is focused on boosting revenue generation in order for us to meet our targeted revenue to GDP ratio of 15%, which was set in the ERGP to have been attained by the year 2020, but we are just at 8% now. So we have shifted this goalpost to 2023, and we now are working out what we must do to be able to attain that 15%. But in general, we're focusing on three thematic areas. One is to achieve sustainability and revenue generation by building a revenue ecosystem that ensures resilience and optimization of performance. Two is to identify new and enforce and enhance enforcement of existing revenue streams. And by growing revenues, we will be looking at some new taxes, and as well as, in addition to the work that the FRS continues to do to expand the tax base. We also have been working on achieving cohesion, making sure that we implement, that the implementing agencies within the revenue ecosystem are working in collaboration to complement each other. There is also the cross-cutting initiative, which is identifying legal enablers as well as legal loopholes that will require amendments to ensure effective performance of the revenue collection agencies. So we have clearly identified some legal loopholes that will be closed, and as the President announced when he was submitting the 2020 budget to the National Assembly, there's a finance bill that is beginning to address that. There's also the need for us to continue to improve collections and collaborate with our other trading partners. There is already designed a very rigorous monitoring and evaluation process to ensure that the targets are being met. Let me take you to slide 41. Nigeria must mobilize significant resources to invest in human capital and develop critical infrastructure. Given the low revenue to GDP ratio, we must pursue optimum revenue generation. I would like to seize this opportunity to call on Nigerians and prospective investors to support this administration in solving Nigeria's revenue generation problems. Indeed, some reforms will be tough, but it must be done if we will look at the facts and be frank with ourselves. However, we will engage the public sector in whatever we do, including any changes in taxes with regards to rates or administrative methods. We will have town hall meetings, and I'm glad my senior brother, Honorable Mr. Lai Mohammed, is here. He will support us in that regard. We will continue to have different stakeholder fora to discuss matters as it affects our businesses in the country. Let me just present to you some key projects that have been provided for in the 2020 budget. In the aviation sector, there's a provision of 1 billion naira for construction of terminal building at the Enugu airport. There's also a 10 billion naira provided for the construction of a second runway at the N8.15trn International Airport in Abuja. In the Ministry of Transport, there's a provision of 67.17 billion counterpart funding for railway projects, including Lagos-Kano, and this is ongoing, Calabar-Lagos, this is also ongoing. Social investment program has a total provision of 430 billion. And this includes 30 billion for social housing, as well as 400 billion for the homegrown school feeding program, government enterprise empowerment program, Empower Job Creation program, and conditional cash transfer program. So the provision is 400 billion for the social investment program and 30 billion for the housing program. The National Social Investment Office is now domiciled under the new Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management and Social Development. In conclusion, I want to invite our distinguished guests to visit the website of the Budget Office of the Federation, the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. We have two websites, the finance end and the planning end. You will find the 2020 budget proposal that has been submitted to the National Assembly by the President, posted, and also a copy of this presentation. I thank you very much for your kind attention.